Oh, yes, I remember. All right, we're ready to go.
Time ago.
You ready?
Yep.
And Shims.
Good evening, everybody. Today is December 15th, 2021. This is the Oregon City regular City Commission meeting, and I'm calling this meeting to order. Mr. Wiley, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Adam Marl. Here. Commissioner Frank O'Donnell. Here. Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Present.
Commissioner Rocky Smith. Here. And Mayor Rachel Lyle Smith.
Here. Will you all please stand and join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all. All right, we do not have any ceremonies and proclamations, so we'll move to citizen comment, and I have Ms. Betty Mum. I think you know the drill, but your name and city of residence for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Betty Mum, citizen of Oregon City. On, December 2nd, I emailed all of you regarding my concerns and comments on your November work session. I heard back from 2 of you. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioner Morrow. I did not hear back from 3, so I am giving you my comments in an email. Hopefully it just went to your email spam, and it wasn't because I had opposition to the comments. It makes a citizen feel invalid when you cannot take 30 seconds and say, thanks for your comments. It breaks my heart to think that I did not get a response because it was not what you wanted to hear. So it's very important. It takes 30 seconds to say thanks for your comment. People have been telling me that they email you guys and you don't respond. You don't make a comment. It makes us feel invalid as a person. So please respond to the citizen's email and say thanks, sign your name, and push send. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Mum.
Mayor Lyle Smith, I just want to say for the record that I did not receive this. So I didn't really know what she was talking about. So.
Okay, so it looks like she provided the
Yes, so I now have a copy. Thank you.
A couple of you. Okay. All right, our next citizen comment is Liz Hannum. I believe she's on Zoom.
Yes, hi, Liz Hannum from Executive Director of the Downtown Oregon City Association. I just wanted to take a really quick minute and thank everyone for the support and help with the tree lighting ceremony a few weeks ago, especially the police department. Public Works did a fantastic job of designing and helping us to make sure that it was lit on time, and the fire department for getting Santa there within the appropriate amount of time too. And then Mayor, thank you for coming and speaking to everyone. I know everyone loves seeing you at our public events. And then Commissioner McGriff, thank you for spending a lot of time cleaning glitter afterwards. Just wanted to say thank you to everybody. It was a great event, and I hope that you can all make it next year.
All right, thank you, Liz. Yes, it was a fun event. A little bit rainy. We got the tree lit though, and
yep,
Santa,
good.
and I love watching the little kids, their excitement. It just excites you. If it's wonderful to watch Santa show up on the fire truck and makes the day of some little kids. So yeah, swing by downtown and see our lit Christmas tree in Liberty Plaza.
And the other decorations that were around it. That I believe did Jan decorate the tree again this year?
Jan is always interested in the decoration. So yeah, she was one of a few.
Yes, it looks great.
All right, and that's all we have for citizen comment for this evening. And so we're going to move on in our agenda to our presentations. And we have a presentation by Mr. Stephen Daniels regarding the USS Oregon.
Mayor Rachel Elias Smith, Commissioner Rocky Smith Jr., Commissioner Denise McGriff, Commissioner Frank O'Donnell, Commissioner Adam Morrow. I'm Steve Daniels, the Outreach Chair for the Commissioning Committee of the USS Oregon SSN 793. I thank you for the opportunity to talk about the new submarine and the significance the crew placed on the Oregon City. I have members of the Commissioning Committee with us tonight. Dave Ford, Dave Ruman, the chair on the committee, Arlo Gatchel, he's co-chair. Lorene Bay is the treasurer, and Jeff Jorgensen, committee. Got 4 sub-veterans here tonight. So this is a Virginia-class submarine right here. That's what the Oregon looks like. That's the crest that the crew designed, which is also a challenge coin. If you know what a challenge coin is, I have one here I can show you. Okay. All right, the first ship named after the state of Oregon was the BB-3. And that was commissioned in 1896. So it's been 125 years since we've had a ship that's been named after the state of Oregon. There's a picture of it in the Willamette. All right, submarine history. The Holland was the first successful submarine purchased by the Navy in 1900. World War II, the submarines were accounted for 55% of the maritime losses of the Japanese. We lost 52 submarines in World War II. First nuclear submarine was the Nautilus, commissioned in 1955. Here's a picture of the Holland. Not very big. I understand it was very hot inside too. In 2014, Secretary of the Navy, Ray Mabus, announced in Portland the future submarine USS Oregon, SSN 793. These are the different classes of submarines that we have right now. The Ohio class, Los Angeles, Seawolf, and the Virginia. And the Oregon is going to be a Virginia class. What they've improvements in the Virginia class is a photonic mast instead of a periscope. I have some pictures. Mast has a high resolution cameras, infrared. The reactor core never has to be refueled. It's the life of the submarine, 30 some years. It's pretty amazing. So it saves a lot of money. They don't have to refuel. And it uses a jet pump propulsor, which is much quieter. They have a seal lockout chamber and compartment. They use fly-by-wire, which I can show you a picture of, to control the submarine. New sonar array, and some Virginia payload tubes. So in 2017, they laid the keel, and that's our sponsor, Dana Richardson. Her husband is the prior Chief of Naval Operation, John Richardson, and Admiral John Richardson, and she uses a chalk to write on that piece of steel, and then they have a welder that welds over it, and then it's placed in the ship. And one of our members was there, Dave, during the keel laying.
Just hold the mic up a little closer to you.
Okay,
yeah, there
I'm
you
sorry.
go. So that way the public can hear you too.
Thank you.
it takes about 5 years to build a submarine. Well, this one's taking about 7.5 because of the pandemic. So a lot of our literature is way off on the commissioning date. It's built in sections and then barged to EB. The captain sent me these pictures quite a while ago. They build the outside hull, and then they build modules, and then they slide them in. And that they can build, he told me at the time, that they can build submarines for the price of 9. That it's much faster and cheaper. And there you can see one of the modules completed that's being delivered to Electric Boat in Groton. There's a couple more. And they're putting it together. It's a layout of a typical Virginia-class submarine. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Their missions: anti-submarine, seek out and destroy enemy submarines; anti-surface, strike; special operations, launch SEALs; carry out intelligence, surveillance; support battle group operations; mine warfare. They had some crew members come out in November of 18, and there's a picture. We went down to the mast of the battleship Oregon, and there's our sponsor. And there's crew members that came out for that visit, and most of us belong, I think all of us belong to the Navy League, and the Navy League is kind of responsible for that mast down there for the BB3, and we had it unlocked, which is pretty unusual, and they went up to the crow's nest, which was pretty cool, and took a picture. And we also flew the American flag, and then we had a Navy League dinner that night and presented it to the crew so that they could fly it on the new submarine. We went down to OMSI. Dave Vrooman and myself volunteered down there, and we gave them a tour, in which they got kind of a kick out of this old ancient submarine. And they came back for Rose Festival, and we were able to acquire a state of Oregon flag that had been flying over the Capitol building, and presented that to them, so they'll have a flag that they can fly on the submarine from the state of Oregon that's been flying over the Capitol. And the captain got knighted, and while we were there, one of the sailors that was there saw Miss Oregon and said, "I think we could get a picture with her." My wife ran back and asked her, and she was all smiles about it, so blew up the picture and sent it back to the crew. And they marched in the Rose Festival parade. These are some banners that they had at the christening. Now, we went to the christening, and there were 4,000 to 6,000 people there, I guess. So they told us it was a big crowd. It was quite an event. That platform is where the christening took place. It's the president of Electric Boat, Greg Walden. He gave a really good speech. And at that, right there, he's telling everybody how you pronounce Oregon. Unless you've seen a submarine out of the water, you have no idea how big they are. And our sponsor's being introduced. And now this moment right here was kind of special. The crew has something that they do, kind of like the Marines, where they say hoo-yah, or they say trailblazers. And the crew shouts back, "Mount up," or did I get that backwards? Yeah. And the captain told me he didn't know that she was going to do this. She turned to the crew, which is all standing at attention, and she yelled that, and they just bellowed it back. So it was she was pretty happy about that. And here she's getting ready to break the bottle of champagne, which was a bottle of Oregon Stoller wine that we had come back. So that was from Oregon. And that's what she breaks it on, because the bow, you don't break it on the bow in a submarine because that's some composite material. It's not steel. So, and that's what she reads when she breaks it. In the name of the United States, I christen thee Oregon. May God bless her and all that sail in her. And there's some special water that she had that sitting in, and I'll let Dave talk about that in a minute. Here's the inside. You can see at the bottom there's some joysticks. That's how they drive the submarine, with joysticks. It's all computerized. I haven't been on one. I'm looking forward someday. Hopefully I can get on the Oregon at commissioning. We'll have to see how that works out. But I understand it's like being on a spaceship. Now, the captain, that's where the periscope would be on an old submarine. He is actually using a Xbox controller to control that mast and look around, and then they've got big, screens that they can see everybody can see what's going on up above. And there it is. Torpedo room. And that's where they sleep. Galley. This is sleeping, which is pretty standard. That's pretty much like the submarine I was on 50 years ago, and probably everybody else that was on a submarine. Pretty tight quarters. This is a lockout chamber. The SEALs store their gear in those lockers, and then they can go up. The submarine can actually hover in one place and stay there. The SEALs can go out, go do their mission, come back, all while the submarine's staying in one spot. This is the propulsor drive. You can see the shrouded fan in the back. And the bow, the sonar dome. All right, our commissioning committee, a purpose. We raise awareness within the state about the construction and commissioning, create enthusiasm and support, promote relations between the state and the ship's crew, initiate long-term relationship, coordinate activities surrounding the commissioning, raise funds, and finance traditional events and activities. Now, the Congress funds building a ship. They don't fund commissioning. That's up to us. There's a lot of traditions that go along with commissioning a ship. One of them is a plank owner's plaque. And our design is going to be in the shape of the state. And the crew member's name will be on that little plaque in the bottom there. And anybody that donates at a certain level and above, like Oregon City, would get honorary plank owner and a plaque you can put up. So each crew member receives one of those. I think we've ordered 250 at about $50 a piece. And then there's receptions and there's lunches. There's a pre-commissioning breakfast and then post-commissioning reception. Everybody that comes to the commissioning is entitled to something to drink and something to eat. So we have quite a bit of money to raise to do this. And the pandemic has really put a real pinch on that. This is the levels. And for each level, you receive something. So I will give you some information. I think Jack might have brought, did you bring, I'm going to give you these. You want to pass those up? There's information in there on that. Okay, and he's got some pins. I'm going to talk about that the crest. You can see it up there. They put the battleship Oregon in the Crater Lake. You can see that, and the submarine. There's the motto of the state, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, which is, she flies on her own wings. There's salmon instead of dolphins. Submariners qualify and they get this insignia that's on my hat, which is dolphins. Well, they use salmon because that's a state fish, and there's silver and gold for enlisted and officers. The eagle has 33 feathers for the 33rd, because we're the 33rd state. They put a lot of thought into this, and there's a line that goes around, starts over in eastern Oregon, goes up through Oregon, and that's Oregon Trail. And right in the O there's a star, a gold star. That's Oregon City. So Oregon City is recognized on our challenge coin. In the back of the challenge coin, they have covered wagon, and there's a bulldog. And that's because the battleship Oregon was known as the bulldog of the fleet. It looked like it had, the bow wake made it look like it had a bone in its mouth, a dog with its bone in its mouth. So, somehow I missed some pictures. Oh, this one didn't have it. Anyway, Dave has a picture right here, and I'll let him talk about it because he's had a part in this.
When I saw the challenge coin with Crater Lake, I used the mic.
Yeah. You want to come up here?
Oh. Yeah, when I saw this challenge coin that they had Crater Lake and the Battleship Oregon and the Submarine Oregon on it, I figured that it would be nice if the first water that hit the hull was from Oregon Crater Lake. So we had a submariner down in Medford that passed away. So we contacted his son, who was a fireman in Springfield, and asked him if he would mind meeting us at Crater Lake and making a trek down to the lake and picking up some water for us. So he said, sure, I'll do anything for a submariner. So this is him, Sean Waite. Anyway, he walked down there and he got 3 gallons of water and probably another 3 gallons on his clothes from the sweat because it was really a hot day. And we took the water and shipped it by UPS back to Groton, and they saved it. And then when they get ready to put a submarine in the water, they don't launch it down the ways like they used to. They roll it out into a dry dock, and then they lower it in there. So when they started flooding the dry dock, the CO, the Cobb, and some other enlisted men poured this water on the hull so that the first water, ceremoniously anyway, that hit the Oregon's hull was from Oregon and Crater Lake. And also the champagne bucket that the sparkling wine was in for the christening was soaking in some of the Crater Lake water too. So that's what that's all about.
So right now, the Oregon is on sea trials, the second phase of sea trials. After the first of the year, they'll go on to the third phase of sea trials. And the last word that we had was it was going to be commissioned March 12th. So any questions? I know Jack would like to say something, right?
Hi, I'm Jack Hammond. The commission was kind enough to have. I'm an Army guy, not a submariner, but they allowed 3 of us to be on the commissioning committee. We really appreciate that honor. I went to the christening at Groton. And I was amazed. I didn't know what I was going to see. It's much bigger than anything we've got in the Army. And it's very, very impressive. The USS Oregon is nearly as long as the USS Oregon, the third modern battleship that we had in the Navy. I'm here to talk a little bit about the history of the USS Oregon. I find that sort of interesting, and Rocky Smith and I are on the Clackamas Heritage Partners, and we, along with the City of Oregon City, who owns the site of the end of the Oregon Trail, and Clackamas County operate the end of the Oregon Trail. And as Steve said, there's lots of linkage between the USS Oregon and the history of Oregon, history of the battleship Oregon, and the Oregon Trail. And if you look on the back of the coin that we just handed out, it has the actual length of the Oregon Trail across the whole state of Oregon, ending in Oregon City. So it's pretty cool. I was very impressed. Just a.
I want to show them that.
Yeah, sure.
This is the christening coin, and you can see the covered wagon being pulled by a submarine.
Pass it around.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, also, I'm a little out of touch here. I went to the old Oregon City Hall, and there wasn't anybody there. This is where my kids went to Mount Pleasant grade school. So I finally found I had to go to Safeway and got directions. The original USS Oregon, or the second one, was christened and commissioned in 1896. It also went through sea trials and that kind of thing. Spent about a year with the Pacific Fleet, and then things happened really quick. In 1898, the ship Maine, there we go. Remember the Maine was blown up in Havana Harbor, and the Maine was what they called an armored cruiser, which is sort of like a small battleship, and it was suspected that a Spanish mine was detonated against the hull, and it went down pretty much with taking all hands. As soon as that happened, the Oregon was recalled to the Pacific coast, and in about 3 months, things got pretty dicey between the United States and Spain, and the Oregon was sent back to join the North Atlantic fleet. To do this, it wasn't the Panama Canal, so they had to go all the way around the Cape Horn, and then that took them 66 days of 16,000 miles, and the fact that it took that long for an important battleship to join the fleet, because we were concerned about Cuba, and that's where they wanted the Oregon to sail to. This is one of the justifications for having the Panama Canal, and so that was one of the last times that you had a large Navy ship having to make that circumnavigation. When it got to Cuba, that's where the rest of the fleet was. But the Spanish fleet had come over from Spain, crossed the Atlantic, and went into the Bay of Santiago and was holed up there. And the the Oregon was the largest ship in the Pacific fleet, and they were waiting. It was a cat and mouse thing. They were waiting for the Spanish to come out, and the Spanish knew that our fleet was out there, and so after a number of weeks, things got a little lax, and the Spanish thought, well, this is a good time to make a break for it. And they had 5 armored cruisers and a bunch of destroyers. And actually, at the start of the Spanish-American War, if you took a poll among the great navies of the world, Spain ranked higher than the United States in our Navy strength. So, you know, there was something to really be considered. Well, they came boiling out and took everybody in the Pacific Fleet off guard, except for the Oregon. The Oregon was the only ship that had their steamers up. And so they were able to take off and go after the Spanish fleet. The Oregon was one of the fastest ships in the world at that time. It could outrun a destroyer or the other other large ships in an opposing fleet, and it ran down and sunk or forced the other ships to go to ground or just to self-scuttle. And that whole fleet was destroyed basically by the Oregon and one of the other 3 new battleships. So it was quite a it happened very quickly, and within a couple months the whole war was over, because Admiral Dewey had gone to Manila with the Pacific Fleet and had sunk most of the rest of the Navy fleet there. So that was the impact on the United States was really significant. We went from a country with very few external possessions, and then all of a sudden we had Cuba and Puerto Rico and the Philippines and Guam and Saipan and Tinian and all kinds of other islands came under our ownership. So that was a very significant thing. It was the most significant thing that the Oregon participated in. By the time the First World War came around, it was basically fairly obsolete. It had been replaced by larger battleships, and it went sort of in and out of service for about 30 years, and finally it's the end run. They were going to scrap it in San Francisco, but World War II came along, and they needed an ammunition hulk hauler to haul ammunition to Guam. So they basically gutted the Oregon, and it was like a big barge, and that provided the ammunition for the taking of Guam. That was about the last hurrah, and in 1955, it was sold for scrap to Japan, of all places. So sort of an ignominious end of a really, really important ship. So anyway, that's what you've got the Oregon Trail, the state of Oregon, as Steve said, at that time, the 33rd state and the USS Oregon all commemorated with this USS Oregon, and it's on the coin as Steve related to you. So anyway, that's all I've got, I think.
So besides the commissioning events, we need to raise money to help support the MWR for the crew. Because this is going to be part of our mission for the life of the ship. And I'm going to let retired Senior Chief Arlo talk about that.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Arlo Gatchell. I live in Milwaukee, sorry. But the big thing about it is the commissioning committee, we commission the ship, but then we are there to support the crew, but we're also support the crew during the commissioning, but after the commissioning. They don't have a very large welfare and rec fund to fund their organizations like their picnics or support groups or things like that for the ships themselves. And so that is part of our target, is to help get enough money where we can give them a good nest egg so that we can keep supporting the crew as it goes through to the life of the ship. You're talking about 30 years. Some other committees have, like the Colorado committee, they formed a committee afterwards, and what they did is when it came back from Westpac the first time, they met it in Pearl Harbor and had a big luau for the crew. And that's what it's about. It's still making the crewmen of the Oregonians. They are honorary Oregonians and say, hey, you're part of us, you're part of our state. And so that's what we do over the years. And that's how we do it. Any questions? All right.
No?
All right, here you go.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for coming and presenting to us. This has been very fascinating, and I'll pass on some of this to our city manager for our city to keep. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And we'll see you at the commissioning on March. Yes. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. So, yes, it's March. That was the extra. Yes. Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, the commissioning event will be this March, and we look forward to participating.
Thank you, Jack. It was nice to see you again.
thank you.
All right, so we're giving them a minute to kind of clear out, making sure folks can hear us. All right, so we're going to move on the agenda. We have our adoption of the agenda, and we consider the consent agenda at this time. I believe Commissioner McGriff, you would like to pull an item?
Yes, please. I'd like to pull item 7A, primarily for the purposes of getting a little more detail so that our community kind of knows what's going on with the implementation of this project. And I'd let Public Works Director Lewis know that I was very excited about this project.
Okay, are there other items to pull?
Not, I'd like to move the adoption of the remainder of the consent agenda.
A second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Mr. Wiley?
Commissioner Adam Marl.
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
And Mayor Rachel Lyle Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, so our rules and procedures, we'll move item 7A down to general business at the end of the agenda. Mr. Lewis. All right, so next up we have our public hearings. First item is our second reading of ordinance. I'm gonna move this. A little bit better? All right, so item 8A, a second reading of ordinance number 21-1014, the legislative application for housing needs analysis.
Are you ready for a motion, or do we need a staff report?
I'm looking to staff first. Hang on one second.
I don't have a staff report for you.
Okay.
Just a brief introduction that at your December 1st hearing, Commission approved the first reading of the ordinance, which included the recommended red line revisions, which are found on page 2 of the executive summary, as they were presented by Beth Goodman from Eco Northwest, our consultant. And those revisions have been incorporated into Exhibit A. That is the staff presentation.
All right, so I'm going to open the public hearing. Do we have any public testimony for this item? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. And I think if is there any other if there's no discussion, we'll take a motion. Commissioner Smith.
So the first reading, it was approved by the commission, but I think Commissioner O'Donnell voted no, and I believe that Commissioner McGriff changed her vote to no. I would like to, if they're willing, to ask them to share any of the concerns that they had that caused that vote, or why they voted no, so that the rest of us can hear that.
Commissioner Smith, I believe that I stated the reason that I had changed my vote at the previous meeting. It has nothing to do with the quality of the work. It just has everything to do with the why and how we got here with that document.
Okay.
I would simply echo those feelings. And again, for me, it comes down to home rule and the state dictating to cities what they need to do without regard for the impact of it. And I won't comment on the report itself. That's why I did it, and that's why I'll continue to do it.
But I believe we are required to do a housing needs analysis anyway, regardless of the latest legislative language that's come out of the legislative session.
That's correct.
So we would normally need to do a housing needs analysis. So just to be clear, we're not, in this case, it's not necessarily, something that we would not have done. We needed to do this anyway. So, Commissioner Smith.
I asked this question very specifically because based on what I heard, I was maybe going to change my vote. So in saying that, is there anything that, separate from our feelings about home rule and the state's push, what is there in terms of this document that we believe we have the ability to fix if this was voted against? What is there that we can do that would, remedy any of the concerns that you have? Or is it just
Well, if you really want to know.
I think he does.
Yes, I do.
I struggle with identifying specific segments of the population as being like the Latinx and making reference to the number of children and the size of the households. I mean, how far do you take that? Do you take it into people's religious beliefs and child raising? And I don't think that has any place in there. I think it's an overall policy, and that was unnecessarily in there.
Did you want us to specifically speak? So Commissioner Smith, during my 8 years tenure on the Oregon City Planning Commission, one of the things that I felt very strongly about was doing this housing needs analysis, but I wanted to see it done on a much smaller, macro level. I felt that we needed to go by area, by neighborhood, and look at what were the needs, what was the land availability, so let me just use Rivercrest as an example, because that was one of the ones I used. So when I was looking at this work that we were going to be doing in the future, I said, wouldn't it be great if we could take the Rivercrest neighborhood, do an analysis of the lots, look at what is going on in Rivercrest. And I know that Rivercrest is predominantly single-family residential, but there are some multiple family units within that. And look at how we could tailor our housing analysis to what we really needed. Were lots in, let's say, for example, Rivercrest, were there lots that were able to be divided? So I wanted to make it much more specific, much more tailored to what we need in Oregon City, as opposed to what we ended up getting down the road, which was the, do it or else type thing. And I still thought that that had value, and that we were going to be looking at applying for grants, because every area of the city is completely different. And what the approach that we ended up having to do was kind of a one-size-fits-all. And I think we could have taken the one-size-fits-all, but tailored it much more specifically to our community. So we know, for instance, in South End, we've got lots of large parcels. We've got the concept area. And when I was on that group, we looked at different types of housing, because we had land that it wasn't constrained with other buildings being on it primarily. We looked at how we were going to be able to take the flood areas and weave those into some type of development so we could be a little more flexible. And I think we had the ability to do that with each of our successive neighborhood areas, to really make it our own and really make it work for what we need in Oregon City. And again, I know that we need more multiple family housing, but there's the whole concept of, could we look at lots where we could partner with organizations like Habitat for Humanity, so not everybody in the world has to live in an apartment building, that maybe small cluster houses or smaller houses like Habitat is building now with duplex that are 2 units with 1 lot, or Juneberry estates that we already have in Oregon City. Those types of things could be fit into different neighborhoods as it's appropriate for that particular area. And that's not what we ended up getting. And maybe we can still do that, because I think it's valuable, again, to make it meaningful, because not every housing type that's identified in that study is appropriate in every place. But we could make different places in the city available, say, this is really going to work here, this is going to work here, this is going to work here. That's kind of what I was looking at. I mean, I was really kind of honing down onto how this would work for us and make it really valuable to Oregon City.
And I would agree with everything you just said.
And is that doable?
I guess I think it is. We'd obviously have to apply for some additional funding to help do that, but I think it's entirely possible. As you know, our town is very unique with our topography. Not everything fits everywhere because of what we've got to deal, what hand we were dealt geographically and geologically. So I think it's possible.
Yeah, but I also think that what you're suggesting is, one, going to be really costly, but two, I don't think we are allowed as a city to say specific housing types are not allowed in specific areas of neighborhoods to get to that granular scale. And that is a result of the latest legislation.
You misunderstood what I was saying about that. I was saying that there are some that they would all be applicable, but other areas that we could, for instance, developers say, well, I'd like to develop blah, blah, blah. Where is a good, we say, well, here. So there's some specificity to it in terms of looking at each area, but not that we would deny something in one area versus another area, but there are more opportunities in some areas in the city than others.
Mr. Conkle, I think you have something to say.
I think a couple things. I think that the discussion about the more granular housing needs analysis was discussed during the commission retreat, and the preference of the commission at that time was to not make it a goal and to not go down to that specificity, but to do the study that we ended up doing through this process. And then just a reminder that Land Conservation and Development Commission adopted Oregon Administrative Rule implementing a housing capacity analysis schedule. These Oregon Administrative Rules require Oregon City to update our housing needs analysis every 6 years, effective 2022. If the proposed housing needs analysis is not adopted prior to December 31st of this year, the city will be required to revise the housing need analysis in compliance with House Bill 2003 prior to December 31st of 2022, and complete a housing production strategy by December 31st, 2023. If the city adopts the proposed HNA prior to the end of 2021, the next HNA update is not required for 6 years. Now, if the commission adopts this, if the commission decides that we want to go neighborhood by neighborhood, this doesn't preclude us from doing that at a later date. But I guess I just feel like this discussion about this granular look at neighborhoods was decided on a long time ago during the goal setting, in terms of setting the trajectory of what this analysis was, trying to comply with the requirements to have this done in this calendar year.
And is there I believe the housing needs analysis, or the next one, the strategies, production strategies, it should be following on its heels. Is there a timeline for that?
2020.
I think that that's something that's coming this next year. That's part of some of the comprehensive plan work.
That's my understanding too, is that it is forthcoming. I believe it's required.
Mayor Lyle Smith, I just want you to know I appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion, but we don't need to beat this horse to death. I'm ready to vote on this. So.
Well, it's not up to me. There's other commissioners who also have discussion, who have valid questions that they'd like questions. If the vote's not going to pass, then we need to have this discussion. And I think that's what is on the table as to whether or not, I mean, we need to get all the questions answered in order to have a vote. Commissioner Morrow.
Thank you, Mayor. So there was one thing that gave me pause when I voted aye last time. And it's something that Commissioner O'Donnell brought up, but I just figured let's go with it. And then there was an interesting article that I saw all over the place regarding the term Latinx. There was a survey that was just conducted, and they found that around 40% found the word offensive in the Latinx community, and that only 2% used the term to identify themselves. And I think that when we're trying to apply English language conventions to something that is a Spanish language convention, that does the exact opposite of what we think we are trying to do by putting our conventions on another one and saying that is the proper way to refer to yourself. And so this wasn't a big thing for me in the last time I voted yes, but in light of that big news story coming out, I would have to concur with Commissioner O'Donnell. I don't necessarily think that it needs to be nixed from the report, but I would like to see it say Latino instead of Latinx, because I think that it is counterintuitive. Yes. They had mentioned that the nation's oldest Latino American civil rights organization had dropped their use of that term because so many of their dues-paying members were offended by the term. So I think that if we're trying to go with what might please the most members of our community, that we drop the term Latinx and use the term that is used by most of them, which is Latino.
So can staff provide some insight as to what would need to change in order for our current H&A to be in compliance with House Bill 2003? Do we know, like, how much of a departure? I'm just reading off of the staff report that would, if this doesn't get adopted by the end of this year, then we will be required to revise the H&A to be in compliance with House Bill 2003. Is it a timeline issue that we technically have another year in order to be compliant, or is there content that would need to change as a result of House Bill 2003?
I believe there is content. I think that it would change. There's requirements that are different from what we're working on now.
Anything else?
Not really.
No?
I just
Okay.
agree that there are substantive differences. Exactly the extent of those, I don't tell you, but there, it could be pretty working, or it may be middle around the edges. I just,
Okay. So, we've spent a decent amount of money on this item to create this H&A. So I'm just making sure we're all on the same page. If the desire is to do the H&A over again and have it done in 2022, we'll have to meet the compliance requirements of House Bill 2003, and that will likely be a budget adjustment. So I'm sure that'd be coming back to us and an adjustment to our biennial work plan. So, and I'm only saying that because I have no idea at this point where anybody's going to vote. I'm just making sure we all know what's going to happen as a result.
I think that we need to move it forward, but I think that the changes need to be made that have been stated in terms of edits, which means we will have to do a first and second reading again anyway. I think when we have to do a first reading again, if we change that edit.
if we were going to make edits, probably the best option would be to do a first and second reading with the changes.
Can we do both
this evening?
Same time?
Mayor Lyle-Smith, so to change Latinx to Latino is going to require a revision?
Yes, I would.
It's not in the ordinance itself, it's in the document. To me, that would be kind of a Scrivener's error, in a way. I mean, we're just asking for a cultural correction. I don't think it's substantive to the ordinance itself, just changing that one term.
The ordinance adopts Exhibit A, and Exhibit A is the report. So I'll look to Mr. Kobeisman on some guidance. So it sounds like we could do a first and second reading.
Another option would be to do the second reading tonight and come back in early next year and make amendments to it and, change the Latinx to Latino. And that way we've adopted it. It's effective by the end of the year, and we fix it, when we've got time to identify all the different locations that Latinx appears.
I'm okay with that. I think to redo the whole thing just to change that one word, to me, doesn't make any sense. To me, it's a Scrivener's error.
I can do that.
Can't we just pass it and say we're changing that one word? That's all we're doing.
And what I'm doing now is looking at the charter and what it says about ordinance requirements. And it says an ordinance enacted after being read by title alone may have no legal effect if it differs substantially from its terms as was thus filed prior to such reading. So the question is Latinx to Latino, a substantive change. And I think what I hear Commissioner McGriff saying is she doesn't believe it's substantive. And that makes sense to me. I'm trying to think through whether there is a situation in which that term change would have a substantive implication. And, on the fly, I don't see one, but, there is a risk, relatively small risk, but, some risk that if we were to adopt it saying, and we amend Latinx to say Latino throughout the document, that may come back in some fashion. It seems unlikely, but.
Don't have anybody here testifying their time from the document. So I concur with your statement that yes, I think we're okay.
So as well. So can you provide some guidance on what the motion would be for this change?
So what I'd suggest is a motion to approve ordinance number 21-1014 with with correction of the Scrivener's error from Latinx to Latino wherever it appears throughout the document, throughout the various exhibits and portions of the ordinance.
I will move to approve the second reading of Ordinance 21-1014, legislative application for housing needs analysis, with the revision of replacing the word Latinx with Latino.
Second.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded. Mr. Kobeisman, do you need to read?
Ordinance number 21-1014, an ordinance of the City of Oregon City amending the Oregon City Comprehensive Plan by repealing a 2002 housing study and replacing it with a 2021 housing needs analysis as an ancillary document, with the provision that anywhere in the document Latinx appears, it will be replaced with the word Latino.
Right. Mr. Wiley.
Commissioner Adam Morrow,
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell,
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff,
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Aye.
and Mayor Rachel L. Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, we're going to move on the agenda to our next item. This is agenda item 8B. And this is the first reading of ordinance 21-1016. This is the adoption of Park Place Urbanization Plan and an amendment to the Transportation System Plan. Ms. Aquila.
Thank you. I would like to introduce or have Kelly Reed, planner, come up, and she is going to give a presentation about Park Place urbanization.
Josh just. Oh.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Kelly Reed, planner. And this is a legislative file this is first reading of the ordinance to adopt the legislative file. The item was continued from November. So the legislative process, just as a summary, is a type 4 process with public hearings before the Planning Commission and the City Commission. There's no timeline limit. The number of hearings can be unlimited as needed. We typically just track issues and public comments that come up in the issues matrix that has been updated and attached to your agenda packet. To overview where we've been with this agenda item, there has been a planning effort by the Public Works Department to put together the Park Place urbanization study. That planning effort I'm going to discuss separately from the adoption process, which is shown here. The adoption process includes the Planning Commission hearings, a Planning Commission recommendation, and then the City Commission first reading and second reading. So you'll see we're here at the first reading, December 15th, and if that's approved today, then we would come back January 5th for second reading. Before I move on, the planning effort that occurred before the adoption process began included a lot of additional public meetings, as well as 2 online surveys and postcard mailings that went out throughout the Park Place neighborhood. So there was a lot of additional process that occurred before it got to this stage. So the Park Place urbanization plan that is being adopted was informed by all of those public meetings and those online surveys. The Public Works Department took on the project and put together the proposed plan. The plan would amend the city's transportation system plan. There are no code amendments that are associated here and no changes to the transportation system plan capital project list. The way this plan will be used, if adopted, is to guide the development community and city staff in determining street designs and right-of-way dedication requirements for development within the project area in the Park Place neighborhood. And I'm not going to go into all the details about the plan because I know you talked about that a lot last week at your work session. So I'll just talk about the revisions. There's been a terminology change. The term local rural street replaces the family-friendly designation for some of the street designs. There is also a new diagram in the plan that shows existing versus proposed right-of-way widths. That was at the request of the commission. And then there are a few other minor changes of the language of the plan that were made resulting from the work session held last week. So last item, you all talked about changes between the first reading and second reading of the ordinance and making sure that they're not substantive. So that's relevant here again. After the agenda packet was published last week, the Public Works Department went through the whole plan document and did a full proofread. And they made some changes to capitalization and changes for consistency, like changing the word study to plan throughout the document. So there will be a proofread edited version for second reading with all the T's crossed and the I's dotted. But there are no substantive changes that were made for that proofreading effort. But we just wanted to let you know that that did happen. And because of the timeline and the need to revise the plan after the work session, the Public Works staff didn't have the ability to get that done before this agenda packet was published. So the Planning Commission recommendation is for approval with the condition that they would like to see more bike lanes and more traffic calming measures in the neighborhood as the plan is implemented. And that recommendation has been reflected in the plan with a revision. And that's been in the plan since you saw it last time as well. So the approval criteria that we look at, that staff, the Planning Commission, and the City Commission looks at when reviewing a legislative file is really the comprehensive plan, goals, and policies. Is the Park Place Urbanization Plan consistent with the relevant comprehensive plan, goals, and policies? And so the written staff report in your agenda packet includes detailed findings about each of the comprehensive plan, goals, and policies. And I'm happy to answer questions about any of those if you have them. Just to summarize, in general, your review of this as a legislative matter includes answering the question, do you agree that the plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan? Do you agree that the plan is consistent with the transportation system plan? Because it is an amendment to that. And then, because goal 1 of our comprehensive plan is citizen involvement, do you agree that the city has followed that public engagement, citizen involvement process to your satisfaction? And if so, then staff recommends that you approve of the first reading of the ordinance. And if you would like additional information or would like to see changes made, then you can continue to a date certain. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Reed. Anybody have any questions for Kelly?
Thank you. I don't know if this really is for Kelly. It might be more for, well, I don't know where he went. Oh, there you are. Sorry. You had your head down and I just couldn't see over the top of this thing for Mr. Lewis. So I appreciated the presentation that we had at the work session by Mr. Wheeler. And I guess the two questions I would have, and I don't know how we want to approach this, but we received 2 citizen comments. So has Geneva Riggs Butterfield been responded to with regard to her concern, and also Ms. Christine Kaczynski?
So I saw the Riggs comment in this packet. I didn't see the Kaczynski one. Is that in the packet?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay.
Sure.
So I did look at that one. I didn't have a conversation with Josh. He couldn't be here today, so I apologize for that. But we're trying to apply a high-level kind of planning guide, and in this case, to a property that has some specific concerns. So keep in mind, this is a guideline that we're trying to use in any future development application. So if that property, for instance, were to come in for a future development application, this guideline is definitely going to be used by staff to kind of determine where sidewalk widths, how wide the right-of-way would be. That doesn't necessarily mean, even if we took it upon ourselves to create a capital project and put that into that particular area, it's like any other capital project. We're pretty sensitive to the existing conditions and try our best to work around those. So that was the conversation that I understood happened. I think that happened at the Planning Commission meeting. Is that correct? So it felt like it was addressed there. I think, there's always that question about, okay, but it's in the plan. How do I trust it? And I think it's really just kind of acknowledgement that this is a guideline and it's going to help in a lot of ways to be able to ensure that we're focused on something that's a little going to get us a little closer to the real world conditions in Park Place than our transportation system plan would. So that's my response to that one.
Okay, so let me just stop you for a minute. So I totally understand everything you're saying. My question specifically was, have we gotten back to them about this specific situation that they're having? It's not going to.
Oh, yes.
It's not going to cause me to not vote against. I just want to make sure again that we're following up with this.
So I'm going to direct that to Kelly because I understood we did in the Planning Commission meeting.
Mrs. Riggs' comment about the ADA access and ramp at her house and on Cleveland Street. We did, Josh Wheeler and I both talked with her after the meeting and cleared up a lot of information. So that's, we've coordinated on that and she's
good.
aware.
Yeah. But you did it verbally. Did you guys hopefully follow that, like something written so she can have this?
Yeah. She has our
perfect.
Mm-hmm, our business cards, contact info,
perfect.
she knows, yeah.
Okay,
Thank
perfect.
you.
Yeah.
And then both of the comments are addressed in the issues matrix as well. So they're kind of generally addressed within the issues matrix, and then we did speak with her.
Yeah.
Ms. Kaczynski's comment was mostly regarding Holly Lane, so it wasn't directly relevant to this plan, but we acknowledged her comment in the issues matrix.
Again, I want to make sure that somebody being told that their issue is addressed in the matrix is not quite as direct to the person to say, hey, yes, here's what this is how we addressed your thing. We sent it off to them so that they can understand that. As you know, Ms. Kaczynski is a frequent commenter on these particular items, and I'm just wanting to make sure that she is being heard and that her concerns are being addressed in the document, and that we are also doing follow-up so that we don't have people coming in and say, we never respond to anybody, because we do, and you do, and staff does. So that's all I was really asking is, how did we get back to them, since these were specifically attached in the report and I read them the last time. So that's the other thing. So, and you asked the question here about questions for the commission, which just flipped to a different screen. I support, this document. I think it's generally consistent with the transportation system plan. As Mr. Lewis knows, I don't support the Holly Lane extension for all the reasons that we've discussed over the years, including when I was on Planning Commission, but that's not going to prevent me from supporting this particular document because it is very specific to the quirky conditions that you end up with at Park Place. And I'm very aware of many of those quirky conditions. And John Riggs was a volunteer for the city for many years. And so I used to deliver packets to his house. So I know that situation that they've got on Swan. It's just, again, built in the county and ended up holding the bag after we had to annex it. And we've got all these odd situations in Park Place that, had it been at our standards, would have been much better, but there were no standards. So I get it.
All right, any other questions for Ms. Reed? No. All right, thank you, Ms. Reed. And with that, I'm going to open the public hearing. Do we have any public testimony for this item? but I have to check. All right. No public testimony, so I'm going to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Mr. Geisman.
Ordinance number 21-1016, an ordinance of the City of Oregon City, amending Oregon City Transportation System Plan by adopting the Park Plan Urbanization Plan as an ancillary document.
Mr. Wiley.
Commissioner Adam Marl,
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell,
Abstain.
Commissioner Denise McGriff. Aye. Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Aye.
Mayor Rachel Lyle Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Thank you, Ms. Reed. We're going to move on to general business. Our next item is regarding the renaming of Barclay Hills Neighborhood Association. We have a resolution in our general business. We have staff presenting this, or is this just the neighborhood presenting? Ms. Laws, you can come on up. So I know you provided some slides to our staff. Do you want to run through the slides?
Yeah, I'm going to speak first, and then I'm going to have Karen speak about more. She knows more background on the photos, and I will speak when needed, but I won't take too long.
Can you wait? Can you introduce yourself and city residents for the record?
My name is Carla Laws. I'm Elyville Neighborhood Chair, Association Chair, and I live in Oregon City. So I've addressed this. I have a few questions that Bob LaSalle had asked me that I find pretty useful. What we decided to make, why did we decide our neighborhood change? And when I became neighborhood chair in 2018, a lot of neighborhood people came up to me and said, your house was a maternity house, by the way, and gave me information about my house. And I was like, well, that's strange. And it was for years. And then they said, we weren't called Barclay Hills. We were Elyville. And so a lot of residents over 65, 70 years old, even through the mid-century, they referred to us as Elyville. The middle button, right?
It'll be on the one on the side, on the right.
Okay. District, also called Mountain View District, District of the Working Class. We were the most southern part of Oregon City. Initially, we were our own geographic location before we started joining Oregon City before 1910. And the original Ely post stop was in front of the water reservoir and supplied water to all of Elyville, and even, going down the hill. I would suspect, based on the Sanborn map, and I'm no history expert, but looking at the Sanborn map from 1900, across from Hood Street, near 808 Malala Avenue. And what is said about it is that it was a very simplistic building. It was a post stop. It was also a convenience store, obviously, the only store up the hill, above Pleasant Hill, which Pleasant Hill is above Singer Hill. There's a description of it I have here in Oregon Geographic Names. Ely Clackamas, Ely, also called Elyville, was a suburb on Malala Avenue near Holmes Lane, extreme part of south part of Oregon City. The localized, sometimes called Mountain View, probably because it's near the cemetery, a place in honor of George and Fred Ely, who settled in the early days, well-known public spirit citizens. George Ely later went to Inglewood, California, it says in the book. Karen may correct us otherwise. Ely was the post-stop operation from the early 1891 until around late 1894, and it actually up until December 1904 before the stores moved down the hill. a compiler named Roberta Codwell, the granddaughter of Robert Bean, the postmaster, said in part, "I have a visual memory and remember the post stop on top of the hill now called Malala Avenue. Grandpa had a candy container in the post stop, and there was always a little glass cup full of pending candies for little girls when they came in to see him there." For us as a neighborhood association, it is to restore what was originally our name, pioneer name, for the residents who've lived here for years, to join the old and the new together to what we originally were. Bob LaSalle asked me a few other questions because I presented to the CIC, what steps I took. I reached out to Karen Ely, talked to local historians, Lisa Graycheck, Historical Society, spoke with a little bit with Denise McGriff, and everyone helped. And then I reached out to Clackamas Historical Society like I did on my house, talked to local residents, and it's been talked about for years, so it felt like it was the right thing to do. The next steps here that looking forward is we're going to try to recognize it as a neighborhood, do some festivities about it, do a sticker possibly in the future for cars, and recruit designs possibly from maybe the high school and Soul Flags to do maybe a contest on a design possibly. I'm excited about it as a neighborhood chair because I feel like we're restoring what we were originally and what we were meant to be, because we really are still the district of the working class. We are, my family is, most of us there, and it's important to recognize who we are. So I'm going to have Karen recognize some photos here.
There they are.
And you can talk to the microphone here. I'll move over.
Oh, okay. I am Karen Ely, and I am the great... Oh, sorry. I'm so short. Well, they're my great-grandparents.
Can you do your name again? Because I couldn't hear that either.
Yeah. And so on the left there is Dwayne, and then George and Dwayne, and George is the one holding the big fish.
Go on and tell me what you know a little bit.
Karen.
Oh, yes, there.
Hey, Karen. Can you tell the commission who you are and your family history? Your name and who you are, because I don't think folks here know exactly who you are.
Sure, I'm Karen Ely. I'm the daughter of Jerry Ely, and I've lived in Oregon City my whole life. I was born and raised here, and I had a wonderful childhood here, and all my memories are of Oregon City when it comes to, growing up and all that. And my grandparents had a great deal to do with Oregon City. They were well-known musicians here. They actually had parties, and I even have something here with my grandmother at the Buena Vista House. They took that area to have different meetings and that. And I have one here, a picture of them with what it looks like a wedding cake of their 50th anniversary, and they always did whatever they could. My grandmother, she taught the neighborhood how to play piano, and my grandfather, he played bass in the Oregon City marching band, and so we just have so many wonderful memories of this place, and it would be so great if we could rename it after my family. They were well-known citizens here, and that's how they ended up getting the name Elyville.
What's this?
And sorry about that.
What's this picture?
That is a picture of the structure of the old bridge that was there. And my grandma Jenny actually took that photo and actually won a contest. You know, I think she was like third place or something like that, because she used to always go to the paper place and, you know, she always did whatever she could. She used to print, you know, different things out in the Oregon City newspapers and that. And, you know, I'm even in there from when I was born, you know. Yeah, so, yeah, that just talks about Fred there. That's something that I had done there.
And we went through the book.
Yeah, the book.
I'm going to mention this here. I'm going to talk loud because I can.
I can't see that.
This is the Sanborn map from 1900. It identifies Elyville in section 16, and there's several spots there that are Ely, which some would argue, but my interpretation based on the 1900 map is that maybe the Pleasant Hill plots were included in Elyville, and technically people refer to Elyville all around the area. That Pleasant Hill plots were between Dewey and down to Division Street, which was called Schmaltz back in the day. Here on Legend of the Sanborn map from 1900, it acknowledges the water reservoir and Elyville. And if you look at the maps here, I have on the right the post-op circled on the 1900 Sanborn map across from Hood Street, so you can kind of get an idea of what that looked like back in the day. And Karen, if you want to explain some of these.
Oh, yes. Both buildings still stand, I believe.
One's gone.
Oh, well, yeah, the one there is gone. But that is a picture of the general store from back in the day. It's across the street from Dairy Queen.
And the original post-op, they say, was a very simple construction with a covered porch in the front. And very simplistic. It was a post-op in a local, store. It was the only store up on the hill. So.
Are you saying post office or post-op?
It was a post-stop, sorry.
Post-stop, okay,
Yeah.
stop.
Sorry,
I couldn't hear the S.
Thank you for clarification.
That's okay. I kept thinking, what's a post-op other than an operating room? So,
And do you want to explain this one?
Yeah, that is, they used to deliver different merchandise in this here, covered wagon.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just at the end, these are Descendants of Ely. Do you want to explain them?
Yes, he is actually a son of Dwayne. Yeah, Stanford. And his house was over there by, if I could remember the name of it, Kanema, the Kanema area.
So Ely was very significant to the entire Oregon City, but it started where we are here in Elyville.
And I have a map actually where it says right there, right next to where Kanema is. I have the map here.
And there's pictures in the back. And technically my vice chair had taken a picture of this. This is the sign of when a developer came in. There were no neighborhood associations back in the day, and about the late 70s, early 80s, development started happening. Lower part, what is currently Barclay Hills Drive, historically Duane Street, and this is a picture of the part of where the new development starts. And I mean, what I hope is that the old and the new come together and embrace what Elyville is. And, enjoy it as a community. Nothing's going to change with Barclay Hills Drive. Nothing's going to change with the newer part of the neighborhood. We're just acknowledging our pioneer history. So I think we're done here. Is there any questions or comments? Or is this something that, you know, the city commission would like to accept possibly as a resolution?
So I just have a question for Karen. So it probably would help if you're comfortable pulling your mask down, so it'd be easier to understand.
Sorry.
So you said that you're the daughter of?
Jerry Ely.
Of who?
Jerry Ely.
Jerry Ely. And Jerry Ely is the son of?
Son of Harless Ely, and Harless is the son of George.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get at.
Sorry about that.
Between the two Ely brothers. I know a lot about the Ely brothers store. Actually, I have an artifact at my house that's from the Ely store. It's a big lard can.
Cool.
It was very cool. It was given to me by one of our former city managers that he got somewhere in an antique store. So yes, I'm familiar with that. So I guess the question I would have for you, Carla, is that I think when you and I was helping you research some of this, one of the things we talked about was Ely versus Elyville, because during the time that we did the first of many comprehensive plan updates before Tony's time, the neighborhood that we were working with was called the Ely neighborhood. And I don't even remember when it changed to Barclay Hills, but when I was starting here, it was Ely. It was the Ely neighborhood. It was not called Elyville. It was called the Ely neighborhood. And it encompassed not all of what is considered Barclay Hills to this day, but the core of where Ely was.
Right, the core original part, because all the other areas were either not developed yet,
right.
You know, they were forests. So Ely was just a small part, the very southern part. And it is referred to as Ely. Elyville seemed more appropriate because that's what all the generations now that still exist call it. That's what the people over 65 that remember that told me. It's Elyville. You realize, Carla, this is not Barclay Hills. This is Elyville. So, and, you know, even up through the mid-century, Dee Dee here in the audience remembers. What was interesting is we took a vote and someone suggested Mountain View last minute as a, you know, even though we had a name committee and everything and did formal announcements, and all of a sudden the phone stopped working. It was really kind of interesting. There was even like this, like, we all laughed and made a joke and said, well, the ghosts of Elyville don't want it to be Mountain View. But that was just kind of an inside joke.
Awesome. All right, Commissioner Smith.
Just a quick comment. I want to thank you for the research. I have also been doing research on Elyville for a while. And I just love this idea of keeping these historic names alive. I think it's one of the reasons that, you know, I felt it was so important to have the monument outside this building to represent Mount Pleasant, because that was the last really piece of Mount Pleasant. And then we have the Buena Vista store, which is gone, but now the Buena Vista building. I think, you know, whatever we can do to keep those historic names alive and share that unique history of Oregon City, I think is awesome. So I appreciate that. And I was just noticing driving around the neighborhood that the name placards are starting to go up in the
sign toppers.
Yeah,
yes,
sign toppers.
Yes.
So it might be really cool to eventually have some Elyville sign toppers as well. But very cool. Thank you.
I've already offered my assistance to Carla to get those, but the thing that's interesting too, when you mentioned Mount Pleasant, if you read some of the historical documents from the Holmes family, they refer to this area as Mount Pleasant. If you were going to be going somewhere, you're going up to the Mount Pleasant area. And the Ainsworth House was listed as being in the Mount Pleasant area.
Yep.
I see this as something innovative for Oregon City. We're looking at in the future of Malala Avenue getting developed, being able to have more businesses that are sustainable. You see residents above in the future is, hey, I mean, this is something in the future that could be innovative for Malala Avenue. So it's exciting, I think, and it's a renovation to Elyville. Most of it doesn't exist. If you look at Hood Avenue, a lot of it goes back maybe to 1925, but a lot of buildings were destroyed. It's reclaiming what was initially here and maybe innovation for the future and development and making our neighborhood more visually pleasing on Malala Avenue.
Anything else, Commissioner O'Donnell?
No.
Commissioner Morrow? All right. Thanks, Carla, for coming in and for leading this effort. It is exciting. I'm sure there'll be resounding support, but we do need a motion and a vote.
I move that we approve Resolution 21-58, recognizing the renaming of Barclay Hills Neighborhood Association, the Elyville Neighborhood Association.
Originally recognized the Barclay Hills neighborhood, as I recall.
Let me hit the on button. You are correct.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. Mr. Wiley.
Commissioner Adam Marl,
Aye.
Commissioner Frank.
Never mind, I apologize. I thought I heard ordinance and I was scrambling to get a copy of it. So it's resolution.
It is
so
a resolution.
I said resolution.
All right, can you start over on the vote, please?
I'll start over. Commissioner Adam Marl,
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell,
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff,
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Aye.
and Mayor Rachel Lyle Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you. It is exciting.
There's scrapbooks back here if anyone wants. Yes, I got tons of stuff back here.
So the comments that are being made from the room are saying that they're letting us know that there's tables in the back with some historical materials for us to check out when this meeting is over, or...
Commissioner Lyle Smith, just one little postscript on that is that Dave Gackel, who owns Multiphase Electric, has purchased the Ely Brothers store, and I think there was an article in the paper recently that he received the Oregon Heritage Commission grant to help with the rehab. It's going to be a while before it comes to fruition because there is so much wrong with the building in terms of deferred maintenance, but I, matter of fact, talked to him day before yesterday about his progress with that. So it'll be very exciting to see that building come back on 7th Street as one of the original buildings that was on 7th Street when it was considered part of the Art Light District. So it's just very exciting.
Exciting.
Very cool.
All right, so we have an item for the general business section, which was 7A, which was pulled from the consent agenda. This is the IGA with ODOT for Willamette Falls Path and Oregon 99E Enhancement Project. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, and I agree with Commissioner McGriff. This is an exciting project. It's not the first exciting project we've done on McLaughlin Boulevard. This is actually phase 3. So yeah, I don't know what it is about these boulevard projects, but we completed the Malala Avenue phase 3 project, and we're jumping into a phase 3 project for McLaughlin Boulevard. This is a tough section of the project, though, I would say. So it's from 10th to the railroad tunnel is the study area. And we received a Metro Regional Flexible Funds grant, which we've gotten these grants before. In fact, Malala Avenue received that grant as well. This is for study work. It's not for construction work, but it's a the project total is $750,028. It's, but the grant is $673 and some change $1,000. And the balance of that we need to match. And so this IGA, these are federal funds, so it's a federally funded project. And there are, unlike the Malala Avenue project, we did a fund swap through Metro and TriMet to be able to administer those funds. These are not, we're not doing a fund swap. So in order to deliver this project, it needs to be administered by a qualified public agency. And while I hate to say we're not a qualified public agency for federal funding and management of those federal funds, so ODOT does that. So this agreement helps us, the city, and ODOT come to agreement with delivery of the project. And really, that's what this is. The grant funding will allow the city to complete the alternatives identification and evaluation to determine how we address this critical gap in our active transportation network. If you are familiar with walking that section of 99E, it's not exactly walker friendly. And so it will look at that and come up with a preferred alternative and get us through a preliminary design to 30%. So we think it's a win. The way the agreement is written is it gives, yes, ODOT administers the project, but it gives the city lots of opportunity to be at the table to make decisions about what that facility could look like. So with that, I'm open to questions. Anything else you would like me to emphasize? I'm happy to emphasize.
Yes, it's, thank you for acknowledging my enthusiasm about this project, Mr. Lewis. Because I sit on the Oregon City West Lynn possible future, when money is available, bridge project, I have been an advocate for, if and when that ever happens, that it land in a location that would complement this project. So that is part of my enthusiasm and excitement about it, because I think it is going to identify, as you've indicated, alternatives that will bolster our position, or at least the position I've been advocating. I see my position that I've been advocating, and also help make the Willamette pathway corridor more pedestrian friendly. It will also be a spinoff to the Oregon City downtown area, and will help the Willamette Falls Legacy Project area. So I see it as a major home run in terms of looking at options by which we can improve this, because I remember at all of the meetings, it's like, oh, we can't have it go there because it's just totally unsafe. Well, you know, there's places on the other side of the river that are totally unsafe too, but they don't have a project in the works to try to address it. So I am very excited about the fact that we're going to proceed with this project and look at alternatives to make the area more pedestrian friendly, primarily because I think it will benefit the city of Oregon City, because I don't have any illusions that that project will ever get funded. But if it does, we will have the documentation to bolster where that might land. But I just think it's going to be a benefit to Oregon City. And as you said, yes, it's a little squirrely to walk along there. But, you know, if you're committed to walking, sometimes people are just going to go where they're going to go. So thank you for applying for this and pursuing this, because I think it's just a home run all the way around.
The only other thing I'd say is kudos to Dana Webb. For those of you that know Dana Webb, our city engineer, she dabbles mostly in transportation across the region. And I know Mary Lausman, she's been pretty helpful with you and some of the work you've done. She has done an amazing job with grant applications, and I credit her with all the work on this one. Sure.
Yeah, I definitely consider Dana my staff person in my back pocket to help me with all things transportation at Clackamas County C4 meetings, and where we are talking about these regional flexible dollars and the STIP and the MTIP and all of these other plans, and it takes years to figure out all the acronyms, and Dana has definitely been a help. And yeah, she's definitely been in the most positive way possible, my partner in crime, to help me with those meetings and to help us, you know, promote and advocate for these regional flexible fund dollars, because we do prioritize these projects at the C4 table, make recommendations, and so it definitely is a partner effort, usually with Dana and I talking about why we want these projects, why they're good for Clackamas County, why they're good for Oregon City, you know, and it's a leverage table where we're all talking and trying to come together and have a partnership. So yeah, and the viaducts in this section, I think, make this project the challenge. So anyway, it's a good one. Do we have a motion?
Adopt resolution resolution, wait a minute, I have it here in front of me. Sorry about that. I have the whole report here. That we adopt the resolution.
There isn't a
It's not a resolution.
It's not a resolution? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're just approving this report. Okay, so we're approving the contract. Authorize approval of miscellaneous contract and agreement. This very long number, 35219/73000 with the Oregon Department of Transportation for Willamette Falls Path, Oregon City 99E entrance 10th Street Railroad Avenue Project CI 22-002. That was a mouthful.
Second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. Mr. Wiley?
Commissioner Adam Morrow.
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
And Mayor Rachel Lau Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. Yeah, that item is actually timely because the C4 subcommittee meeting this morning, we talked about regional flexible funding allocations, and
Perfect.
Dana was on the call, and I sit in those meetings and send my emails to Dana, say, hey, Dana, what projects do we got that we're going to talk about in the next, we want to promote for Oregon City. So yeah, it's a good conversation. So, all right, communications, item number 10, Mr. City Conkle, City Manager Conkle. Mr. City Conkle, that's a new name, yeah. Do you
I have nothing for tonight, thank you.
All right. Whew, anything for the commissioners? All right. Okay, and I just kind of said my spiel about C4 at the meeting this morning, so I don't think we have anything else. We are going to move to executive session immediately following this meeting, and probably a swing by of the back table of the historic documents. But with that, we're adjourned.